Hey everybody! Today we're talking about healthy aging, and you know that pickleball and healthy aging go together. There's so many great things that we can do about it, but I have a question for you. So, what is the most significant change that you've noticed as you get older? So, go ahead, put that into the chat over on the side. Say hello, tell us where you're calling from. I will tell you this, my most significant change as I'm getting older, it has to do around recovery. I've been an athlete my whole entire life, and I know that one of the things that I need to do to stay at the top of my game and to um, play the best that I can, no matter what sport it is, I have to allow my body enough time to recover in between events. As I get older, one of the things that I notice is it takes more time for me to get going between events. So tell me, put something into the chat. Tell me what has changed for you. And please do me a favor, put something over there. My mistress of chat, Dale, is not able to join us tonight. So it's me running the chat as well as running the production. So somebody out there, tell me hello. Tell me you can hear me and that you are seeing the live stream, all those sorts of things. By the way, my name is CJ Johnson, and I am with Better Pickleball YouTube channel. So welcome. This channel is dedicated to helping players who are over 50 look and feel their best on and off the court. Hi, Monty. How are you? Thank you for chiming in there and telling me that the world can hear me. You know, sometimes you're stuck in your little studio and you're going, okay, it looks like all my tech is working, but is it really working? And frankly, I can't turn on one more device to find out. But today I have joining me in just a little bit Coach Dotti B, and Dotti Berry is the CEO of Epic Health and Wellness, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Is feeling ageless is fun. And maybe that sounds confusing to you. It did when I first heard it, but I got to tell you, Dottie's got some great stuff coming your way. Hello, Jerry Lynn. How are you doing today? And Billy from Middleton, Texas. Hey, Billy, how are things going? Let's give a little shout out to Dave Olive. As you can tell, it's probably warmer in Middleton than it is here in Tahoe. I've got on a pretty heavy, a heavy fleece. I was chilly. So I hope it's nice where you are. Oh, Helen, nice to see you. Helen's calling in from the East Coast, and we got Dale is in the house. Woo woo! Hi, Dale. How are you? And of course, William. William Chuscott, he is always here. Another Texan, and then we got Cindy. So hi to everybody. Before we get started, just to let you know, coming up, we're going to continue this live show until June 2nd. And we have some great guests, not only tonight with Dottie coming up in just a few minutes, but I've got some great guests coming up the next 3 weeks. Next Tuesday night, May 19th, I have Dave, the Badger Weinbach, coming to us from my whole old haunt, which was Wisconsin. And he's going to talk all about pickleball and answer your questions and all those sorts of fun things. On the 26th, I'm working on having somebody here. He's told me tentatively like yes, so I'm going to shout this out. Phil Lamoureux, and Phil has been running the COVID pickleball challenge, the fitness challenge, over on Pickleball List. If you are not over there, please come over and join us. There's still a few days left to that. We are working out with some of the top, and I'm going to say this, young pros in the business. We've had Corinne Carr, and we've had Kyle Yates, Johnny Pickleball, Gizmo's been on. We got Lucy Kovalova coming up in a day or two. So there's still a few minutes, and there are some great challenges going over there. So come on over and visit us. And then on June 2nd, which will be our last weekly live, then we'll go back to the monthly live show, which is always the first Tuesday of every month. I've got Hella Spar coming in, and Hella is fantastic. You know, she came to Tahoe a few years ago. My partner and I went up and we spent some time working on our doubles game with her. And I got to tell you, she's a wonderful teacher. She comes from tennis, and she has a system called Dynamite Doubles. In fact, she's doing some launches. so you may want to check that out. But she's going to be talking all about doubles play and how movement changes as we get a little bit older. So if you don't want to miss any of that, you can hit the subscribe button for this channel. It should be kind of right underneath the video. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button and you'll get notifications when we post any of those. So all righty, so it looks like we got, oh, Dave is telling me it's cold and snowy up in Canada. I'm expecting snow anytime here in Tahoe. It's getting chillier and chillier. So, hey, Leon, and we got Sadie coming in the house and Brent. So glad that everybody could join us. So I'm running the show alone tonight. I'm just forewarning you, okay? I'm just forewarning you. It's kind of like playing pickleball against like a Kyle Yates or a Lucy Kovalova. The 30 years my junior and those balls are going to come way faster than my mind is able to handle them. So if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat. Either put a Q or a question in front of it, and I will do my best to get it to Dotti and to get it answered. So let's get going. Here's my question to you, and I haven't seen this posted yet in the chat. So what's the most significant change that you have noticed as you've gotten older? I started the story. I told that story for me is recovery, but I would like to know what all of you are experiencing. So go ahead and put that in the chat. All right, so let me introduce you to, let me go ahead and make sure we got everything all working here. Here she comes. Coach Dotti B. Coach Dotti, how
Here I am,
you?
right on the pickleball court, huh?
You got it. You got it. So for those of you who don't know, actually, her and I met in person. You know, sometimes you have some, well, at least I do. I have some pickleball friends that I have never met in person. But Dottie and I had the opportunity to meet here in Tahoe last year when she came here for an ambassador's retreat. And I have to tell you, you are in for a real treat today. She has a super diverse background and she knows so much about health and wellness and healthy aging. I just can't wait for her to share some of this stuff for you. So before I go on and on about you here, Dotti, why don't you take this opportunity, if you would, and please introduce yourself to the Better Pickleball audience. Tell us who you are.
Oh, yes, I would love to, because I have to acknowledge you, CJ. You've made such an impact on me because I qualify for your channel with being over 50. Can you believe that? But when I started learning about pickleball, it was the craziest thing. I would say third time was the charm. And what I mean by that is I was talking to our trainer, our former trainer, I should say, when I coached at Kentucky. And Mimi said something about pickleball. And then I was talking to a client in Oklahoma who was using my medical device. She said, oh my gosh, it was great for my tennis elbow. I said, tennis elbow doing what? She said, pickleball. And I went, oh my goodness. Then I was in Arizona with a friend, and she said, we're going to stay with some of my friends for the weekend. Well, we no more walk in the door than they say, we're playing pickleball tomorrow. I said, this is the third time I've heard this term in 6 months. What is pickleball? So they come put an iPad right in front of me, watch this. And I said, well, I don't have any court shoes with me and I don't have a paddle. They come and they put a paddle in my hand and a brand new pair of shoes. Now, what excuse did I have? None. So I went the next day. I come home 2 weeks later. Well, first of all, when I come home, I find out they've been playing pickleball 3 minutes from me at the community center for almost 10 years. I couldn't believe it because I fell in love with it. 2 weeks later, I was in Hawaii. Just very quickly, I'm on the plane coming home, sit next to this guy. He says, what did you do while in Hawaii? I said, I played pickleball every day. He says, well, my good friend, who's from the town, Chelan, Washington, he just won the U.S. Open, and his name is Tyson McGuffin. I said, sir, I am so sorry. I don't know anybody or anything yet. He said, well, you need to look him up, you know. So I'm a curious person. I Googled him when I got home. I was like, oh my gosh, he's in Spokane, Washington. He's having a boot camp. So CJ, guess what I did? And then I started looking for videos, and that's how I found you. And you told me about, you know, the boot camp you were having with Laura Fenton Cavanda. And so it just all fell into place. And I was in Tahoe, and your boot camp was 2 days later. So, I mean, is that crazy or what?
It really is funny how the pickleball world, like bobs and weaves and all those different things that we have going on in the pickleball world. And it really was, I have to tell you, so Dottie came over for the camp, and she just added, as you can tell, she has a ton of enthusiasm, and she just added an enthusiasm and a smile to everything we were doing, and she made a great camp even better. So and it was
Oh, well,
wonderful to
thank
meet you.
you. And, I have to say, I'm sitting up here in Birch Bay, Washington, just 5 minutes from the Canadian border. And it sort of confuses people. They go, "Well, where are you from?" And I go, "Oh, I'm from LA." And they go, "Really?" And I go, "Well, that's lovely Atlanta." I said, "You think LA's only on the West Coast? We've got lovely Atlanta on the East Coast." But I've been here for 20 years, and I was almost 50 when I arrived. So, the accent is not going anywhere. If somebody needs to interpret my English, go ahead.
I love it. I think it's a very cute. So Dottie, we're getting a few answers to our question. When I said what's the most
Yeah.
significant part, that you've noticed as you're getting older. No surprise here. William says a lack of flexibility. Dave says, and this is actually a question, which we can put that in as we start to answer some of this. He's talking about soreness and lack of stamina after only an hour and a
Mhm.
half of playing. And he's a very young 72. So let's start to talk about this subject, and let's start to tackle this. And by the way, keep putting some of your answers in there. What's the most significant change that you have noticed since you've gotten older? Because I know there's something. Okay, you're over 50. Something's different. um, so Dottie, let's start this out first. And by the way, Dottie brought some slides along to help to show you some of these things firsthand. So what do you mean when you're talking about feeling ageless is fun, which is the trademark that's sitting like right above you right now? That kind of seems
Yeah.
contrary to everything that society
I
wants to
know
tell us about
it.
aging. So tell me what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, it's counterintuitive, but that's been my life. I'm a counterintuitive person. And I always have questions like, if somebody talks about the aging process and they're trying to tell you how it's got to be, I go, "Who said that? Where did you come up with that?" So I just recognize that, feeling ageless is really fun. But I think we have to unpack it a little bit first so that we can get to the part that feeling ageless is fun. And what I mean by that is sort of like with our mental thoughts. In order to start having our empowering beliefs, we kind of have to unpack the negative beliefs so that we recognize them and say no more, and then replace them with those empowering beliefs that are going to help us in pickleball. So one of the things I think we have to acknowledge is we have to look at the health crisis that we do have, not only in our country, but in the world. And you might want to just throw that one up there real quick, CJ, with that slide. Because one of the things we look at is there's a lot of people that are having, pain. There are a lot of people that are having obesity issues. And what that does, all of that impacts how we feel in the world. So I think we have to take it back to even connect with a time when we were a kid. And here's one of my favorite pictures. I think I'm 5 years old at this time, CJ, if you want to put that one up. And I've got my pigtails and I've got my hands clasped together. Like I'm just having, that is like a look of joy. And the funny thing, CJ, is that Barry, our mutual friend, who I actually met at your boot camp, she and I were talking a couple of days ago, and she's back playing a little bit, slowly integrating in. And she said, "Dottie, I just realized that it connects with the joy inside of me." And I think that's what pickleball provides for so many people, which has been challenging during this time where, we haven't been able to get on the court and play. But I think part of feeling ageless, and feeling like it's fun is to tap into that joy that we had as children. So even as we begin to move forward, though, I'm always saying to people, doctors tell me that the two things that people complain about most are not having energy and having sleep issues. And to be quite honest, those two are very interrelated, because probably the number one thing that can help you with your overall health is to make sure you're getting adequate sleep. Because when you don't get adequate sleep, you don't have the same kind of energy. So when I'm working with people, one of the first things I ask them are a few questions. Do you feel stressed? Do you feel discomfort? Do you feel unfocused, restless, sleepless in Seattle or anywhere else? Because these things signify that something else is going on beneath the surface. And so it's important to understand that, to kind of know where do we go from here. And there's another slide I brought along because I think it's really important to look at how many disease states are actually diagnosed. It kind of blows your mind, but there's about 45,000 cataloged medical conditions. Now, this is the real key, CJ. 95% are related to disrupted microcirculation. And when I say that to people, honestly, most people don't know what microcirculation is. They'll go, well, what do you mean by that? And so then I share a few things with them about stacking blood cells, and you might throw up that picture as well, because this is really critical. Our microvessels, and we'll show you another picture in a minute, make up the majority of our bodies. It's not our arteries or veins. So when you start to look at that and you see these clumping of the red blood cells, that's the cause, the Rayleigh effect, okay? And the key here is that only one blood cell at a time, carrying the oxygen and nutrients to your cells, can get through a microvessel. That's how small it is. In fact, the hair on my head, one hair, is like 10 times bigger than a microvessel. So if because of the poor health, these red blood cells begin to clump, as you can imagine, they cannot deliver the goods. CJ, it'd be kind of like me saying to you, hey, I'm coming in a vehicle to bring you $1 million, CJ. Don't worry about it, I'm on my way. And then you call me a week later, you go, where the hell are you? I thought you had $1 million for me. And I go, well, I do, but there's a massive wreck of 1,000 cars and I can't get through the traffic jam. Now, if I'm in an Uber, let me ask you this question. Is the value in the Uber that's bringing me to you, or is the value in the $1 million? It's the $1 million. The Uber is just the vehicle. So the bottom line is, if we can't get through the traffic, there's no way you're ever getting the goods, which is, the oxygen and nutrients. So then what happens is when you get into those, at the level of exchange, that's where the metabolic wastes are going to be carried away. But that's sort of like, those little vacuum cleaners that go along, robo vacuum cleaners, and they swoop up everything. Well, if you get adequate sleep, that little vacuum cleaner, so to speak, the white blood cells, comes along the side of the vessels and it just sweeps up all the garbage at night. But if you're not getting adequate sleep, and most of us aren't getting enough REM sleep, which is where regeneration of the cells take place. So you understand what I'm saying? All the trash is floating around in your body. It's kind of like, CJ, if you build this beautiful new home and I say, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. And I drive up and there's all this junk around, nails and boards. And I say, well, CJ, your home is beautiful, but what happened out here? Oh, the dump truck never came. Well, you're not going to want to bring your grandkids to your home, because what if they go out and step on a nail? That's like the metabolic waste just floating around. So CJ, when you start talking about recovery, this is really important, because if you can't get rid of the lactic acid in your body, that's why you can't recover as quickly anymore. So just kind of setting a context for things in terms of how our body works. And if you'll kind of put up that other slide, I think this is really a great visual about the 74%. Yeah, go ahead.
Perfect. I will. I'm going to put that up here, and I'm going to jump in here for just a second, though, because first of all, what I would tell you is this: is if you got $1 million from me, I'm not going to wait a week to call you. I will be calling you the next day. Just so we're really clear about that.
Yeah.
because what I want to talk about is, so some of the questions that are coming in the chat tie directly into this, right? So we're talking about lack of flexibility, some soreness and some stamina issues, tight calves, Achilles tendonitis is one of the things I'm seeing. Now I'm going to call you out, T, because he says less patience with partners who won't try and change bad habits. I don't think that's physical. That was like the mindset summit.
That was a couple
Yeah,
ago.
that was a couple ago. I don't think that one qualifies. But chronic arthritis and some of those things, and this is from somebody who's got a lower back issue, and Steven said he's not even over 50 yet. So
Right.
so talk about how does that all tie into what you have just been talking about?
Yeah. Well, when we have these chronic issues, we're not getting enough blood flow to those areas, okay? And I don't know how many people listening have heard of Vaso Motion, but it's actually the pumping motion that pushes the blood through your body. Consider it kind of like a water hose kind of thing. If your water hose gets a kink in it, you know, it's either going to blow a hole, but things aren't going to flow well. So when you're in like your late 20s, you'll have 30 to 50 vaso motions, pumping action every 10 minutes. But when you get up in your 50s, 60s, 70s, you're going to have maybe 3 to 5 vaso motions. So the bottom line is part of the reason that we have the aging process that we do is because the slowdown of the blood flow. Slow down in blood flow means the goods, the $1,000,000 are not going to get where they need to go, which is in the exchange going back and forth. Now, CJ, you know that, you know, I use a device that helps improve that. We're going to, you know, share some information, CJ will, when she emails you and so forth. But, you know, that's part of it is keeping that blood flow going well so that it really gets to your micro vessels. And I will say too, if you look at joint pain and so forth, one of the things that happens, the pain in the joints, people think, oh, I don't want to overdo it, so I'm going to stop. And that's really the opposite, because that pain is simply a symptom. It's a symptom that your joints are not hydrating like they used to. There's not the fluid in there. It's kind of like a sponge that, you know, you squeeze it and then you wring it out. And so when this fluid is not going back and forth in those joints, then that cartilage begins to get exposed. And that's when you have pain. So people want to stop doing something. But really, you either use it or you lose it. And people don't like to hear that. But sometimes they're doing the opposite of what would help them in these situations to get the blood flowing better, to get the fluid moving in between the joints. And, you know, bottom line is we've got to start looking at how do we work on the inner part of our body so that what shows up on the outside works well and that we have overall good health with our immune system and so forth. I mean, very important topic right now is how do we keep our immune system strong? And a lot of these things I'm talking about are extremely important.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the kind of the questions keep coming in. We're talking about arthritis. We're talking about chronic lower back issues. We've already some fibromyalgia has popped up in there. So Dotti, what are some of the things we've talked now about? Microcirculation is influencing that. We've talked about sleep. What are some of the things that we can do to keep from getting that compromised immune system and to stay healthy?
Yeah. Well, obviously, there's a reason that all those diseases are on that list. The majority of people's issues are not from, what would I say, genetic. I mean, that's just the truth. They're from what we call lifestyle choices. There's a reason it's called choices, because we chose to do things that led to certain conditions for ourselves. I mean, I've even heard people say, well, you know, my mother or my aunt had this. And that may be true, and you may be predisposed. But when you know that you're predisposed to something, you want to do other things that will help you maintain your health. And so that's what I was working on. I mean, even doing something like pickleball, exercise. These are the things that are going to help that blood flow stay, going through your body better. But again, I do use bioenergy for myself, and I use it a couple of times a day because it improves blood flow. That's the bottom line. I'm looking to improve my blood flow because I know that is a foundational element of everything that happens in my body as I age. If I can keep the blood flowing to the systems, they support everything. I mean, like your immune system is supported by your circulatory system. So when you have compromised circulation, the disease states that come out of that, everything that you're mentioning are what happens in the body. So we can have good diet, good exercise, but when we can actually have, a device of some type that can literally help us improve that blood flow, that's a great tool to have. And so I use mine every single day, twice a day, and for 8 minutes. And that helps me keep that blood flow much better. And, the funny part is I kid people and I say, when my pickleball skills catch up to my health and I can really get into those longer matches, I'm going to kick butt because, and here's another thing to understand. Beta amyloid is something that is in the brain, and when we don't get enough sleep, it tends to form clusters. And if you look at some of the research, there's some NIH studies that talk about that particular clumping is in the area of the brain where Alzheimer's is found. So if you look at everything, eyesight, brain health, everything is determined by adequate blood flow. When you stop that blood flow, the oxygen and nutrients to the cells, you stop the possibility of elimination of the metabolic waste in a good rate, in an enhanced way, not sitting there forever. I mean, imagine if there's trash sitting in your system for a long time. It'd be like trash sitting in your teeth. That's going to rot you out. So, these are some of the things we have to look at, like what are the different ways that we can improve blood flow? And some of those are like we're already doing, pickleball, walking, lifting weights helps, eating correctly, because eating correctly opens up those vessels. If we eat poorly, what happens? We get cholesterol and we get clogs, and the body is very unique, CJ. It wants to help us. I mean, those vessels will form all the way around other vessels just to try to keep us alive. I mean, the body is magnificent in what it does, but if we help it more, it can help us. And that's why I say feeling ageless is fun if you figure out those things that you can do to keep the highways opened up.
Okay. So, and I do want to talk a little bit about, Dotti does have a device that she brought here that I had an opportunity to use that I do want her to chat just a little bit about. But before we talk about that, you kind of mentioned those five, you mentioned about 5 things just now that you don't have to have a device. Those are things that anybody can do. But I really want to drill down just a little bit on the sleep part, right? Because we've mentioned that a couple of times, right? Sleep is critical to recovery and it's critical to performance. And unfortunately, our sleep habits do tend to change as we get a little bit older. So what can you share with us specific to sleep?
Well, that's a great question, CJ. And one of the things I will say is, and I'm not proud of this, but I'm a very driven person. I'm a big vision person. And when I get a vision in my mind, I mean, I'm going for it. But I don't know about you, CJ, but we used to brag about how much we could get done on how little sleep. And I realize how absolutely ignorant that is now. And, with the device I use, we actually have a sleep mode. And when I first started using it, I just thought, I sleep okay, until I understood that this actually helped me improve my REM sleep. So some of the things we can do with sleep, though, people have a tendency to keep their electronics around them, keep them plugged in by their bed. That type of light keeps the mind awake and it's not a good thing. Watching TV, turn it off an hour before you go to bed. Plug I know that some people need to have their phone in their bedroom because they have, parents that are older and that type of thing. But we don't have to be in our phone, checking text and doing all those kind of things before we go to bed. So those are a couple of things we can do. And also, okay, it's okay to have a drink, a glass of wine, something like that. But if you're drinking, right up until the time that it's almost time to go to bed, that's going to disrupt your sleep. So, and I'll tell you one thing I used for years is a thing called a spook. It's like these little acupuncture things that are on a mat. And I love my spook. And that's an inexpensive way to get blood flow into your body, which helps your sleep, But the body goes into a different format. It's sort of shunting away so that you can sleep better. And so a lot of people, really doing some of these lifestyle choice things is what inhibits their sleep. And so also, I mean, this may sound crazy, but having a good mattress. Years ago, we got one that I call it, it's like a hospital bed. It kind of raises your head and raises your feet. It puts you in what I call the lazy boy position if you want it. If you ever notice that when people have back issues, they'll say, oh, I'm going to go sleep in my lazy boy. But, just looking at things in your bedroom, your mattress, is it comfortable? Your pillow, find a pillow that really supports your head well. I mean, all of these are the little additional things that you can take a look at that will improve your sleep.
And I want to stress, I think what I hear you saying more than anything else is make sleep a priority, right?
Yes. And honestly, it's not that I did it crazy all the time, but I just look back and I don't know, we get influenced when we're young. And I remember one time my dad was a fireman. He also had his own landscape business. And one time he went to the fire department, and this was in the summer when we were kids, and we went back to bed. And he came back by the house and found us asleep. So I was taught that sleeping equaled lazy. Now there's a difference between being depressed and sleeping and not getting out of bed. But I have found that one of the most important things I can do is get really adequate sleep. Because when I don't, see, people mistake this. Sleep is not something you can make up. I mean, just Google it. Just Google it and look at the impact of sleep. There are some great people doing sleep studies out there, and they talk about even when you miss a whole night of sleep, the negative impact on the body. And no, you can't make that up on the weekend. So that's just one of those myths that we bought into. And so I just tell people, look, it may not be 8.5 hours, yours may be more 7.5, but guess what? It's not. It's not 4 and 5 hours of night asleep, because, like in Silicon Valley, it's well known how that's negatively impacted people. I've heard friends talk about it, the bragging rights about all they're doing and accomplishing, and then they start taking things to stay awake. That's another issue. Anyway, and because when you don't put these things into play, and I know people who have been on sleep medications for years. I'm not saying that certainly not all medications are bad in any way or form, our medical conditions need to be addressed when we need that. But if we don't have to take something, how much better is that if we have good lifestyle choices? So
Absolutely.
I like to look at what can I do first of all, and then what can I use to enhance that I already am doing? And that's why I essentially started using the bioenergy. I was curious. It really helped a friend of mine who had 8 bypasses. I mean, he was a 6'2" guy that jumped rope every day, and all of a sudden, he passed all the stress tests, and they were like, there's nothing wrong with you. And then they did a catheterization, found out, oh my gosh, we need to do 8 bypasses. And I kept telling him, George, you're the one that had 8 bypasses and didn't have any energy and couldn't sleep. that's not me. Why would I need to do this? But being curious, I just wanted to find out, well, what helped my friend? So I started diving in a little bit more. And I thought, wow, I've always been proactive about my health. Walking, honestly, people say, Dottie, why have you walked for over 40 years? And I kind of chuckle and I say, to stay off meds for my head. It's a really good thing,
So
for what I
let
call
me
the
let,
blues.
let
Yeah.
me it is a good thing for the blues because you get some dopamine, right? And you get out there and you
Yeah.
get active, just what pickleball is. I know that's why some of us have been struggling during this time where we can't play.
Yeah.
But so I do want her to touch on this device just a little bit, because sometimes when we've tried everything, so I mean, so you've gone through, and let's just talk about sleep for an example. So you've gone through and
Yeah.
you've tried all of the different things that you can do, and perhaps you've gone and you've sought a professional, because there certainly are a lot of sleep centers out. Sometimes you need to open yourself up to something that's a little bit different. So you've talked a little bit about this device. Why don't I mean, and why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about what it is, what's the bioenergy, and tell us a little bit more about that. How does it impact you?
Yeah. The bottom line is, after 20 years, what they've really seen is that it improves the blood flow. I mean, it is the one device on the market that does that. And studies have proven that. We work with NASA. We're working on creating a interliner spacesuit. So it's been very effective because, as you can imagine, when you're an astronaut and you leave Earth, what gets impacted? Your blood flow, because you've left gravity. And so being able to handle that, obviously, I've already mentioned that exercise is great, but they can't exercise 24/7 in space because that's not what they're there for. They are there to do experiments and, to help with things that are going to change our world. So the bottom line is that it it creates the vaso motion that we lose as we age. And by doing that, it actually increases the blood flow. And then we get the oxygen and nutrients that we're wanting. And it enhances the removal of the metabolic waste. I mean, it's actually so simple, it's almost mind-boggling. And then it puts the body in an environment in which it can do what it's supposed to do, which is take care of itself. So it's not the device itself, it's what the device does. And it utilizes pulsating electromagnetic field as the Uber, as the vehicle. But the real value is in the 5 patented waveforms that literally put a cascading effect systemically through your body to do this impact on the blood flow and just overall health. So when my CJ, I don't know if you know this, but my undergraduate and graduate degrees are in health and science. And so when I went back and studied, because I was curious about what helped George, then that's when I got educated. And I was like, wow, this could help me sustain my health. That's what I want to do. I want to be proactive. And, I carry it to my pickleball tournaments. And we have Tyson McGuffin using it, and Sarah Ansberry, and a lot of other pickleball people that are finding that it dramatically impacts the recovery. Because think about this, CJ. Part of the reason that you have soreness in your body is because of the lactic acid buildup. If we can get the lactic acid moving out of your body quicker, then your recovery is better and faster. Now, if you're a pro player, or even if you're a rec player and want to play rec ball every day and you're like me approaching 70, then something that can help me stay on the court more than off the court, I'm loving that. Yeah.
That sounds perfect. Okay, so sorry, I was finishing typing some in the chat. There's still some, like I said, I'm running everything today. I don't have my Vanna White of chat. So, um, so I am, my things are, I'm getting split here. So, let's
Yeah.
talk just, so you've talked a little bit about the device. And we've talked definitely about about sleep, How about, because we had some questions about chronic arthritis. We've had some questions about both chronic and mild arthritis, fibromyalgia, some of those things. How does what we're talking about impact those, and what are some of the things that people can do for themselves? I know you talked about staying moving and that sort of thing, both with the device. I know we've got the device, and I will tell you this, by the way, if you want to know more about that, because this isn't a commercial for the device, I will tell you this.
Yeah.
I've tried it. It is it was really interesting, and interesting in a good way. I couldn't jump up, and my body felt really different. I got up and I did like this 20-minute treatment, and when I did, my body felt more relaxed, and it was after a really hard day of playing pickleball. So
Yeah.
it was a very interesting experience to me, enough where I would say, hey, I want to share this with you. And I want to tell you guys this: if you want more information on that, we are over on Pickleball List. So that's Pickleball with an IST. We already have a chat going on over there. I'm going to try and see if I can put that link in the post while Dottie's taking the next question. Be patient with me. If you want to know more about that, we will definitely continue that conversation with you over there as well. So please feel free to come and join us over there later. But Dottie, if you can talk again about some of those questions that we had coming in, specifically like the fibromyalgia, the arthritis,
Yes.
what are some things that people could do right now to help alleviate some of the symptoms that are happening for them, right, with those conditions?
Yeah, part of these conditions is that it's very challenging. There's no doubt about that. With fibromyalgia, oftentimes the sleep component is a big part, and with rheumatoid arthritis. But I think what you really have to do too is go back to what is at the root of 95% of the conditions. And it is disrupted microcirculation. And that's why improving the blood flow can make such a profound difference for people. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Whatever we can do to improve our blood flow is going to be very key. Now, a lot of people with rheumatoid arthritis and so forth have also sort of gone the route of foods. Some foods impact people differently, and that actually sometimes is like an elimination process. Eliminate one, see how you do, see how it impacts you. Here's what I've discovered, CJ. Everybody's body is so different. And it's not, for me, it's not like, why can't the doctor figure out what's going on? For me, it's more like, isn't it miraculous that the doctor can figure out anything because of the different combinations that can happen within our bodies? And our inner bodies are just as unique as each of our names. And so that is really challenging. But what I've found with our device is that the body really uses what it needs. And that's why what we do is not a disease specific kind of thing. It's literally about, bottom line, improving that blood flow so that helps improve everything else that's going on in your body, because that is the foundation. I've got a cardiologist friend who's still practicing, and he told me, we were at a meeting, and he said, until I was doing this, he said, Dottie, 2 years ago, I could not even bend over and put the ball on the tee. And he said, now I am. And I looked at his wife and I said, so how's that working for you? How's it impacted your life at all? She said, oh my gosh, well, first of all, when his life changed, my life changed. Have you ever been around somebody whose, chronic conditions are so challenging? And I will say that, CJ, you know this, chronic conditions do not go away overnight. Let me repeat that. Chronic conditions do not go away overnight because they didn't arrive overnight. I'll say to people, how long has this been chronic? They go, 20 years. I go, well, that's going to take some consistency with improving your blood flow. If you get an injury in the moment, that's a whole different story. Adequate oxygen. And CJ, I don't know if you know this, but the guy who came up with the rice method about applying ice, he has now renounced that. I mean, you can look that up too. I don't say this thing you can't look up. but he has found that ice is not the best thing for injuries. So, we're having to rethink a lot of things. And yet, there's major colleges in pro sports, they're still icing every injury. Are you aware of that, CJ?
I have seen that. I will tell you this. I haven't dive. I've done. I took a little bit of a dive into it, and Um, I haven't seen all the evidence that would yet make me go in the total opposite direction. I do think ice has its place, at least right now. That's what the science shows. But that's not to say it won't change. And I
They
think that's
kind of
what you.
explain what place that has, but it's not the place they thought it had. I mean, I
Mhm.
think that's what's really critical. I mean, I remember as a high school coach, we're on the bus, I'm driving the bus, but before I start driving the bus, I've got a bucket of ice and I'm jamming their foot down in there for a sprained ankle. And I just sit there. I don't know. It kind of reminds me of when I was first coaching, and some of the things that I taught were totally wrong, but I convinced my players they would work. So we still won more than we lost. But if I'd really known better, we probably wouldn't have lost at all, except for my bad coaching. So sometimes I look at that and I go, well, here's what I would say. My mantra daily is Ankara Imparo. And that means I am still learning. And Michelangelo
Mhm.
spoke that at the age of 87 after painting the Sistine Chapel. So I'm always questioning thoughts and how I'm already thinking. And I don't mind if somebody gives me information, I'll say, let me take a look at that. And
Absolutely.
so I dived into that and I was like, oh my goodness. And I actually had a situation where a friend rolled her ankle on the pickleball court. And I went and I always travel with my little device. And I had it in there. So I prop her ankle up. And I said, Melinda, promise me you won't ice. And I want you to take this whole thing. I want you to use it for the next 3 days. She said, don't ice. I said, will you trust me on this? She did not ice. I promise you, I saw her ankle roll. It would have been a 2-week injury. I know those. I've seen them plenty of times. That was on a Friday. She was back on the court on a Monday, not playing on Monday. She started playing on Tuesday, but she was walking around and hosting a session. And people were going, how are you already back on the court? Because they saw her. And so that was my first chance to sort of, partner that up. And she was willing to give it a try. It couldn't be any worse, she thought. Um, so,
Absolutely.
sometimes we have to do a little bit of experimenting and keep our minds open.
So, and I think that one of the things that Dottie's bringing up is stuff is changing when it comes to health, right?
Yeah.
As we all know, what was the right thing to do yesterday is not necessarily the right thing to do today, and that's not because the science is imperfect. That's because science is always changing. We're always learning more. Like one of the comments that Stephanie had, and she said she heard about rice, but she also said infrared heating pad is what she's been using. And I will tell you this, interestingly enough, when I go get acupuncture, right, I am open to different modalities, and it's one of the things that
Mm-hmm.
helps me. And she uses infrared as a form of moxa, which is heating the needles.
Yeah.
I get great relief from that. Now, not everybody who goes to get acupuncture or uses infrared or
Sure.
anything else are going to get those same types of results. I think our point here is to make sure that you aren't being the old dog who you can't teach new tricks to.
Yeah. Yeah.
That if you really want a healthy life as you get older, there are definitely ways to do it. Hey Dottie, we had a
And
question.
CJ, I will say that some people ask me, "Oh, this particular thing helped me," and I go, here's the thing: improved blood flow never hurt anybody. What it will do for your body and when, only your body knows what it needs. But at the very least, you'll probably get up from even one session and have more energy. That's what's reported. I mean, when I talked with Sarah Ansbury, the first thing I said, so how's it going? She was like, oh, I'm sleeping better and I've got more energy. I said, well, I don't want to cast you in the lot with everybody else, but that's the most typical thing. But she has a knee injury. You can tell it. I mean, everybody knows that. I said, that's not going to that's not going to be okay overnight. It's going to take some consistency. But knowing that that consistent blood flow can shift something, people they want some hope,
Yeah,
and I've seen
absolutely.
enough things happen that I can firmly, feel good about that hope and improved blood flow.
So one of the things that Don asked, hi Don, how are you? Good to see you. So Don asked, so what is a good blood flow like for somebody who's 50 years old versus maybe somebody who's 75 years old?
Okay, so let's not get confused with blood pressure uh, in your blood flow. Um, if you were experiencing pain and discomfort in any part of your body, it's a cinch you're not getting enough blood flow. I'm going to give this example. Now, CJ, you told me not to move much because, on these virtual backgrounds, it might go crazy. But let me just ask you this. Have you ever put your arm up under your pillow and you go to sleep on it, and then when you pull your arm out from underneath, it's numb and you can't feel your arm? Now, why is that? It's because you have cut off the flow, the blood flow, and the oxygen going to your arm. And it's gone to sleep and it feels like it's dead. And you shake it, and like pound on it. And then the blood starts flowing back into it. And what happens when you experience that? Well, there's a little bit of a tingling or a warmth. And that's because the goods, the $1,000,000, are finally reaching your arm and you can feel it again. So what's happening in our bodies as we age, I don't care if you've got something going on in your knee, your back, your whatever, you are not getting that juice, that oxygen and nutrients to your cells. And your body is going to say, I'm not liking this. You're not feeding me, and I'm very hacked off. So, I want you, I try to put it in simple terms, but CJ, some of the times it is more simple than it's complicated. Because our bodies can work very efficiently if we work with our bodies. But our bodies rebel when they're not getting what they need. And how would you feel, CJ, if you didn't get fed for a week? I mean, you'd be like, come on, give me something. I need it. I need it. Is that true?
Absolutely. And I agree with you. Our bodies do rebel, especially as we get older. I mean, some of the mistakes that we could make when we were in our 20s and 30s, those mistakes
Yeah.
compound themselves as we age just because of the normal processes that our bodies go through. So we have to be much more diligent in how we take care of ourselves in terms of performance. So cool.
And
I
I
think.
will say, CJ, that,
Mhm.
massages are good. Being in a hot tub's good. But what I will say about all these things, I love my massages, and I love my hot tub every morning with my coffee and Robbie reading to me. However, those things do not impact our body at a systemic level. Okay? Systemic is the key. In order to really be helped ongoing, we have to have a way of improving our blood flow so that it happens systemically with our body, because that's the way our bodies can then kick in and start really assisting us with the robo vacuum, with your white blood cells, because otherwise the inside of our microvessels, and you might want to just pop up that picture now, they can become like a stream or a river. That Yeah, go back to the other one right before there. The other way, yeah, other way, other
Let's
way.
see. I'm gonna try and go
That's okay.
right
Next
there.
one. No, next one. There you go. Okay, stay right there for a second. No, it's going off that one.
Yeah.
Um, can you get it back to it? Anyway, you look to get it back there while I chat a minute. So imagine this. You
Yeah.
have a stream in your backyard, and all these sticks clump together and they create a dam, and the water can't get down the creek or the river. Okay, so that's what happens in our bodies. So in order for our bodies to work well and support us and create healthy immune systems, we can't let all the bridges, those stacking blood cells, get all clogged up, because then Nothing's moving through that. And the inner micro vessels will actually be like sludge. The blood flow will be going so slow that it's hardly working in people's bodies. So what happens when that happens? We can have heart attacks, stroke. Again, I go back to all these disease states. At the root is disrupted microcirculation. And I'll just tell you what was on that slide. 72% of your body is microvessels. We have, get this, CJ, 72,000 miles of microvessels in our bodies. That is a lot. Can you imagine? But it's the inner system that carries everything. And I don't know if anybody's seen the, I wish I could think of the name of the show. It's been in Denver. It's the body kind of stripped of the skin around it so that you can see what the inner body looks like with the vessels. I mean, Google that one. Oh my goodness. Then you can really get a sense of that system of microvessels that's feeding our bodies. The brain, oh my goodness. The gut, when we don't get the proper circulation, CJ, a lot of people think that the serotonin and so forth is in our brain, but actually it's gut centered. And we'll have things that happen called leaky gut. Remember the analogy of the hose, when it gets a kink in and then all of a sudden it springs a hole because it's just trying to get through this hose. Well, have you heard of leaky gut? Because, we literally have a tube that goes down the middle of our body. So stuff is not supposed to leak into our gut. The crap is not supposed to be going in there. And so that's toxic waste that is leaking into our gut. And this causes disease states. And we're discovering all these things. Used to, we couldn't even, we didn't even have powerful enough microscopes to see these tiny things. What we know now is through these microscopes. I've got a video that I'll let you share with people later, but it is profound because it shows the sluggish one and then it shows moving really fast. But we couldn't see this before because we didn't have the electronic video microscope to see that. Now, even though they can see them, guess what my cardiologist said? He said, well, like oxygen to the cells is the holy grail. We've known that, and we can't operate on microvessels because they're too small. He said, I can operate on arteries, I can operate on veins, but I cannot operate on the microvessels. So again, we're getting information we've never had before.
And that's the exciting part is, as you can tell, there's a lot of exciting things going on. So, Dotti, this has been fantastic. I want to thank you so much for coming on, for sharing this with us today, and do want to encourage you if you've got some questions on specifically on the device, if you have some questions on some of the other healthy behaviors, we're going to take that over. I put a link up a little bit earlier. It's Pickleball List, but again, it's pickleballist.com. Come on over there. Dotti and I are both over there, and we will continue this conversation. So stay tuned for just 1 second. I'll tell you about who's coming up on our
CJ,
next show.
can I ask you something real quick? Maybe you can post those two pictures.
Oh, Dotti, you froze.
Into the pickleball.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. You froze. I lost you for a second.
Oh, sorry about that. I said maybe we could post those last pictures because two of them are really pertinent to pickleball about beneath the iceberg and what happens, when one's not good stuff going on there and how to transform those at the end. So maybe we can share them over on the list.
Yes, exactly. We will share those. So we've got some more information for you, but we will get those over on Pickleball List.
And thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks
so much. Yeah. All right. Okay, man, I got to tell you, that was a lot of good stuff. And so hopefully you've gotten some, not just some things that I mean, Beamer is a great device, but hopefully you got some information where you can create some healthy behaviors for you, and that you're open to exploring new things to make your bodies feel better. And like Dotti said, it's not that fibromyalgia or arthritis or chronic injury, they're not going to go away overnight, but there are things that we can do as long as we keep our minds open. So let's see. I got a couple of things. Yes, Don. I tell you what. Join us over in the pickleball list, and I will have Dottie answer that question over there because she's already off. Carol, this will always be available later. Anytime you use these links, and hello, Carol. It's nice to see you this week. Anytime you use these links, it will go back to the replay, and I try and timestamp them for you. Don't forget, coming up over the next couple weeks. Next week we got Dave the Badger Weinbach, a professional pickleball player extraordinaire, 115 gold medals. Wow. And what is it, like a 12-time US Open champion and a 10-time national champion? So he's going to be talking and answering all your questions about pickleball. And then on the 26th, we're going to talk about some of the tips that we're getting from some fitness pros, including Corinne Carr and Kyle Yates and Lucy Kovalova. And then on June 2nd, we've got Hello Spar talking about dynamite doubles. So make sure that you hit the subscribe button and come on back next week. And I always end this with sharing with you. Together, we can train smart, live bold, and age well. Everybody have a wonderful evening. I got to lean over here to shut this off. All right.